You're listening to the Station 71 podcast with your hosts, Mario.
Beth.
And Brian.
So this week we are going to continue our Magic Kingdom in-depth tour with a little look at Liberty Square. Probably one of my favorite lands in Magic Kingdom. But before we dive into that, let's take a look at some of the news things that happened this week. So, first up, we saw Star Wars Galaxy's Edge walls started coming up around the entrance area. There were some pictures posted online. I'll link them in the show notes so everyone can take a look at them. But it's interesting to see that we're progressing to a point where they're starting to build the entrance tunnel. How do you guys feel about the way that this is shaping up? Because I know I'm a little indifferent on how they're gonna split the entranceway from the rest of the park.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how they make it transition, because it doesn't look like it's doing, a very seamless transition right now.
Yeah, it's going to be hard, which has always been kind of an issue I felt like with Hollywood studios is, if you're going to try to make these movie sets and then blend that into, what's supposed to be like an actual, real scene that you're put in, it's kind of hard to draw a line there. It's not like in lands and other parks where you can kind of put some in-between stuff in to help the blending. It's going to be kind of a sharp contrast, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So, I read a little bit about this article that apparently you're going to enter through a tunnel, but I'm kind of really interested to see how the rest of the land is going to be hidden. Kind of like you said, Brian, it's hard to hide some of these things, and we've even seen it with some of the construction. They're going to have to build some really big walls or hide those sightlines pretty well just to kind of cover some of this stuff up. So I'm interested to see how it shapes up. Next up, speaking of construction, we saw Disney Quest starting to come down, and I kind of mentioned this earlier. I'm also going to post this in the show notes as well, but it's a pretty large-scale destruction. They knocked the entire back half of Disney Quest off, and it's such an eyesore. It's just bare construction, and my biggest question is, why didn't Disney just throw up a scrim or something here? At least try to cover it up. It's kind of oddly not Disney.
Yeah, I was shocked to see how gross it looks, and to be able to see how gross it looks.
I wonder how long it's going to be before we actually see maybe just something here. And I know it's a huge building, so that might have been it too, but even if they just throw a temporary billboard or something up in front of it so we can't see it.
Yeah.
I'm still kind of sad about Disney Quest going away, not for what it was, but for what it had the potential to be.
I think that's definitely a really interesting thing to talk about is the potential of Disney Quest, because if you go and you look at the ideas that they had for Disney Quest and just the overall idea of putting these little mini virtual theme parks all over the world, that would have been so cool. But rest in peace, Disney Quest.
Yep.
I never knew it.
Most of us didn't. So, lastly, just a fun little kind of thing to talk about, since there wasn't a lot of news this week, and before we dive into the really big and exciting show we have going on. Joe Rohde was stopped by a U.S. passport officer and asked, "When are you going to fix that Yeti?" So, I know Brian and I both have some really strong feelings about the Yeti, so I kind of wanted to include this in our news article this week. He tweeted it out on Monday morning, word for word. The tweet said, "U.S. passport officer looks at my passport. my face and says, "When are you going to fix that Yeti?" Which is just so funny because that's another thing that had such great potential and is such a big letdown.
Yeah. Well, not even, I mean, for a very short-lived amount of time, it was the incredible animatronic that it was, marketed as before they had to, put it into B mode and have it not really do anything and just be activated with strobe lights, and it's just sad.
Yeah, after our little talk last week and seeing the video of it in A mode, I'm really sad about it.
That's the thing. I feel like a lot of people don't think that much about it if they haven't seen it, how it's supposed to operate, and then it's just like, wow, it was incredible, and now it doesn't do anything.
Yeah, I want to say I maybe caught it once in A mode. I cannot remember, but it's just so grand of an animatronic. Like, it's so big and it has so many different muscle movements that it's just mind-blowing that we could create something like that and then it just can't work. So are we ready to dive right into this, guys? I'm super excited about our Liberty Square walkthrough.
Let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it.
So this one, actually, I want to take a moment to kind of start it off as like a general atmospheric introduction. I know Brian and I added a couple different things in the show notes about some just stuff that goes on in the streets of Liberty Square, and then we can kind of go from there. So do you want to start off with your things that you found, Brian?
Yeah, sure. And this is one reason that I love Liberty Square so much, is that I think more than any other land at Magic Kingdom, that the Imagineers really went the extra mile and just threw all these little details in there. Not that they don't do a good job in almost all the lands, but Liberty Square, I think they went even further with it. So there's a couple cool little facts. So one of them, if you look around, a lot of the shutters on the buildings are crooked, and that is keeping with historical accuracy because during the Revolutionary War, a lot of towns were trying to scrounge up as much scrap metal as possible, and one of the things that they would do was take the shutters and take the metal hinges out of them to scrap those for bullets. And when they did that, they would replace the hinges with leather straps. And over time, sitting out in the weather and just the weight of the shutters would cause them to stretch out, and they would be crooked. So that's one of the things that the Imagineers put into Liberty Square, crooked shutters on most of the buildings, which is pretty cool. And then another one, which is kind of annoying to some people, but in keeping with historical accuracy, there are no bathrooms located in Liberty Square outside of the one that is required in the Liberty Tree Tavern because it is a full-service restaurant. And to even go further, there is one inside Columbia Harbor House, but the Imagineers located it to the extreme left as you walk in, which technically, if you look at it, would place it in Fantasyland and not in Liberty Square. So thought that was pretty cool. Maybe they took that one a little bit too far, but it's interesting nonetheless.
I'm gonna kind of riff off of yours because I liked the transition between this one. In keeping with that theming, this is one that a lot of people know, and I know it's kind of like boomed up in popularity over the last like year or so for some reason. If you notice the way that this street is paved, it's got that brown flowing sidewalk just periodically through it. I don't know if this is actually something that Disney said or is historically accurate, but everyone always says that that's like because of the way that they used to empty out their waste in colonial times. I'm not 100% sure on that, so don't quote me on it. But I know that that's been a popular thing over the last like year or so that everyone's been saying.
No, that's true. They talk about it on Keys to the Kingdom.
Do they? Interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's where I learned about it.
Okay, so the next one off of that I found, there's a time period progression from the Haunted Mansion down towards Frontierland. The Haunted Mansion is fashioned after houses along the Hudson River in New York in the early 1700s. Wow, way off on that one. And as you progress through Liberty Square, there's an area with sections of buildings, each with a front door. The addresses on the house are 2 digits. If you put an 18 in front of that, you get the number of the time frame for the particular buildings. So it kind of just is like a nice little walk through the colonial architecture. So that's a neat little thing that I read as well. In my research, I actually found this one kind of interesting. There's a lot of talk on the internet that the actual Liberty Bell in Liberty Square is a 1 in 50 replica, and that there was one cast for each state, and that because Pennsylvania had the original Liberty Bell, they gave this one to Disney. That is false. There's actually a plaque under it that reads it was specifically made in 1989 for Walt Disney World, and fun fact, it rings in E flat when you strike the bell. So those are some interesting little tidbits. I'd actually never heard that was a 1 in 50 cast replica, but when I was reading it, there were like 4 or 5 sites that I saw that were like, no, this is a thing, this is a thing, this is a thing, and I was like, it can't be. So I had to look up a picture of the bell, and sure enough, right under it, it says, this is not the 1 in 50 cast replica. But anything else you guys want to add about the atmosphere, now that we've kind of thrown some knowledge around about that?
I don't know. I really like this land a lot. I don't know. I have like a kind of fascination with historical type of atmospheres. Like, over on the East Coast, how we have like colonial Williamsburg and stuff like that. So it's really cool to have this at Disney.
Yeah. And I think this is one land that kind of gets overlooked a little bit, at least as far as, if you're kind of a park warrior person, you're probably going to go through and just jump on Haunted Mansion and maybe do the Liberty Bell. But there's a lot of stuff to really dig into if you're into theming and like Beth said, historical stuff. It's definitely one to check out.
I really like this land, for the obvious being that Haunted Mansion is my favorite attraction, but I was reading up on some of the stuff that I threw in our show notes, and a lot of people say that Liberty Square is actually the most tame in terms of theming, but I tend to disagree. There's a lot going on here, and a lot of it's really fascinating to just look at and kind of take in.
Well, I think that has to do with the fact that it's not thrown at you, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but when you go to some of the other lands in Magic Kingdom, Adventureland, you feel like you're in the middle of the jungle, or Tomorrowland, you see all this, cool, sciencey, futuristic stuff going on around you. By those terms, Liberty Square seems tamed, but there's so much theming kind of below the surface if you really look into it, so.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And also it's like realistic, so maybe that's why people think that it's tame. It's not out of the, it's actually happened.
Yeah.
Settings, instead of it being like Fantasyland where it's fairy tales, or Tomorrowland where it's like the future, or it was the future back when they made it.
Now it's just dated.
Yeah.
But no, I totally agree with that. I don't think that this land is in the slightest bit subtle. I think there's a lot going on, like I said, and it's very well themed. But with that said, let's dive into the attractions, the shops, the general things to do in Liberty Square. First up, we've got the Diamond Horseshoe, which is a seasonal restaurant. I've never had the chance to eat here. Have either of you?
I have not.
Nope.
In looking it up, it's apparently open very, very, very rarely.
Yeah, I was about to say, I don't think I've ever even seen it open.
I know I've passed by it, but I've never actually been able to go into it, like you said. And even looking at the hours on, I Googled it, and the hours came up. The dinner hours end at, 7. when it is open. So it's open from 12 to 7 on certain days. It looks like it's actually open now, probably for the Halloween party, I would venture to say. It looks like it's an all-you-can-eat buffet. It's got a bunch of, like, like barbecue-style food, according to their menu, but I've never had the chance to eat here just purely because I don't think that, it's ever been open when I've been there. That said, if I want barbecue food, I'm probably going to head to a couple different places, not the Diamond Horseshoe. Just because there's so many good barbecue places on property.
Yeah.
But after that, we have one of the more known restaurants, Liberty Tree Tavern. Have either of you eaten there?
No, actually.
I see this restaurant get a lot of love. I think probably because it's like Magic Kingdom doesn't have a lot of restaurants, I guess. But I think I've eaten there maybe once. The food wasn't incredibly memorable, so maybe that's why I don't remember it very well. But that's my 2 cents on Liberty Tree. We're off to a great start, guys.
We're not doing too great on going to these restaurants, so...
Yeah, I don't think I've ever been there either.
We should have known this going in when we have these 2 topics that have no notes up underneath them.
Yeah.
I know I've eaten here one time. I don't really remember anything about the restaurant other than, like, the food was average. And I swear I ate there for lunch and had a burger of some kind. So maybe I, am just not getting the right thing. But this definitely gets a lot of love on social media and through Disney reviews. Probably because it's one of the few restaurants in Magic Kingdom, or at least, really good ones, I guess. Supposedly, since none of us have eaten there. Now on to the stuff that we actually can talk about. Sleepy Hollow. This is an underappreciated gem, as I stated in our show notes. They have a sweet and spicy chicken waffle sandwich that is so good. We found this, like, purely by accident one time, because it is kind of in a weird spot. Like, there's usually a semi-small line there, and you kind of want to think that it's, like, a snack counter or something, just by where it is and how it's set up. But we stopped there for, like, a late breakfast, early lunch type thing, and that sweet and spicy chicken waffle sandwich, like, blew my mind. And it's one of those things that I always think about that I'm like, I need to stop and get this again.
Yeah, I had the fresh fruit and Nutella waffles sandwich, and it was absolutely delicious. I'm a big fan.
Nutella on anything, you just, can't go wrong with.
Mm-hmm. There's a reason it's so popular. But I think that's all I've ever eaten here.
They don't really have a large menu. It's mostly like these chicken and waffle sandwiches and, stuff like that. I swear there was another one on here, like another version of a chicken and waffle sandwich that wasn't the sweet and spicy one, but it's not there now, so I may just be delusional.
I feel like that sounds familiar, like it was something that they took off the menu. But memory's failing me now.
Right.
I have had the funnel cake, actually, now that I think about it. And, I mean, it's funnel cake, so obviously it's good.
Yeah, I vaguely remember seeing that there, too. But like I said, it's one of those things that they have such a small menu. It's in such a weird spot that you would assume that it's probably just, like, a snack counter or something.
I mean, I guess technically it is, but
yeah,
it has, like, more interesting food than a regular one, like, more than fries and
Right, it's unique
burgers.
snacks.
Yeah.
Have you ever had anything from here, Brian, or have you kind of just walked past this?
Yeah, mainly just walk past it.
So, after that, it comes up to Hall of Presidents, which you can go with that because I know you have some notes on that one too.
Yeah, so this is another opening day attraction from Disney. It has given a speaking role in animatronic to every current president since 1993. So right now, as I'm sure a lot of people know, it is in refurbishment, as the Trump animatronic and voiceover are supposed to be happening. The latest news I've heard on this is that Disney is still claiming a late 2017 reopening, which seems more and more unlikely because last I've heard they still have not recorded the speaking role for this. So, yeah, probably not happening for a while then. So,
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about that opening period because there's been so much in the way of like them putting it off and like things happening with that it's just like it feels so unlikely it's gonna happen anytime soon.
yeah.
And not
Yeah, I've heard lots of different stories, and I don't really know which one's the most true. You know, there's like, you know, Trump won't cooperate to give us the recording, and then people are like, no, Disney doesn't want to do it, but, you know, who knows what the real story is. But at the risk of sounding too political, it kind of sounds like they don't want to open this up.
Well, it
I think
seems
they-
like it's been closed forever now. Maybe it's just me, but I mean, I don't have the actual dates in front of me, but I feel like it's been close to a year or more since it's been under refurbishment.
it's been almost a year. Don't they
I
usually
think
close
it's
it?
been over a year.
Well, don't they usually close it like right after the election for the new presidents? Or like shortly after, because they try to do things as current as possible with this attraction. So it's definitely had to be
Yeah.
almost a year at least.
I'm looking at a news article from October 4th of last year that said it was supposed to be a 6-month refurbishment.
So much for 6 months.
Obviously it's been over a year at this point, so
Yikes.
yeah.
So, kind of
Very
a cool little
interesting.
kind of a cool little fact that I found while looking this up is the Hall of Presidents is actually a federally recognized presidential museum. So that's kind of interesting that, you know, they would have that in a Disney park. And there are genuine presidential artifacts located in the lobby. So if you take a walk around, you would notice different things like presidential seals. There's the George Washington's beer cup or whatever it is. But there's a bunch of different things. So it's a nice little introduction to the attraction that you can kind of walk around, take a peek at, and keeping with the theme, learn a little bit about history.
Yeah, I think it's really cool.
This is an attraction that I hate to admit that I often overlook, and I feel like it is very easily overlooked because it's never got a huge crowd around it. But it's definitely one to take the time and to at least kind of just appreciate it for what it is.
Yeah, I don't remember the last time I did this attraction. Like it's definitely one that it's like a once in a while kind of thing for me, but I actually really do like looking around at the artifacts. Probably more so than the attraction itself.
Yeah.
But anyway.
So after that, we've got the Liberty Square Market, which is that little tiny snack area, I guess you would call it. They serve various things like hot dogs, turkey legs, drinks, slushies. Nothing really super to note here, I don't think. It's kind of just a nice little stop to sit, grab a quick snack, and kind of get yourself out of the heat because they have those umbrellas and everything over it. So it's a nice little place to kind of just sit in the shade for a bit. I don't know if you guys want to add anything onto that.
Yeah, and I don't think I've ever gotten anything
It's
from this particular one.
it's just kind of another cart. I know someone's going to disagree with me and be like, "No, it's the best thing ever," but it's
Turkey
just
legs tastes different at this one.
probably. But I know that it's just kind of a place to sit, get your turkey leg, get your hot dog, get your lemonade, and just enjoy the shade. So after that, we've got the Liberty Square Riverboat, which is another one I think a lot of people overlook. There's a lot of overlooked attractions in this section of the park, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Have you... Go ahead, Brian.
Well, I was going to say, I remember last week, I think it was last week, when we kind of talked about, or I guess it was probably the week before, when we were talking about going and over-planning and hitting the parks too hard and trying to find areas to still enjoy the parks, but kind of relax. And I think Liberty Square has a lot of really good attractions and things to do to kind of do that, to get an experience but still kind of take a break. And Liberty Square Riverboat, I think, is a really good example of that. You know, take 15 minutes, go on the boat, go around, you know, and see Tom Sawyer Island and all the other stuff, and kind of relax for a bit and unwind and get away from the hustle and bustle of the park, and kind of like use it as a chance to kind of reset, you know, recharge your batteries, and then go back and hit the parks.
Yeah, I actually am kind of ashamed to say I had never ridden this until my most recent trip in September, but I made a point to, because I was like, there's something that I've never done, and I really enjoyed it. Like you said, it's very relaxing. It's, you know, a lot of people I think pass it over because it is so long.
Mm-hmm.
Like it takes a little chunk of time out of your day, but I think it's totally worth it. You know, I just thought it was, you know, you ride a boat around in a circle, which, I mean, it kind of is, but they also have like all these little like sets set up, like little Native American campsite, and like a guy sitting on a front porch in a rocking chair and stuff like that. And I thought that was really cute.
Mm-hmm.
I think the reason that this gets overlooked as much as it does is, one, like you said, it seems like a very long attraction. In the grand scheme of things, that ride is probably worth taking the time out of just to relax alone. But it's also got a weird kind of load-in area. It borders very close to the Haunted Mansion entrance queue, or to the line to the queue. So it's in a very weird spot alongside of the fact that people think it's got such a long wait, and I think that totally kills the crowd levels for this attraction.
Yeah.
But it's a nice ride. It gives you some good views, and it gives you the chance to relax and just kind of take a load off. Like we said, you know, a couple weeks before, like Brian said, relaxing on your vacation is important. So this is definitely one that I think is probably good to at least do once in your Disney going experiences.
Mm-hmm. It's pretty cool too.
Yeah.
If you like Tom Sawyer Island, I think this fits in really well with it. You get to go around and kind of see different areas of the park. It's kind of from different angles you don't normally do. You get to come in and see Haunted Mansion from kind of the back side of it. So it's pretty cool. If you're into that kind of stuff, and I would think if you're into photography, I see a lot of people getting pictures from this kind of around to, you know, get different shots that most people don't get. So it's pretty cool in that sense.
Yeah, I was gonna bring that up. I took my camera for a change when I did it, and I got some really good shots. It was cool to see a side of the park you don't normally get to.
The Liberty Boat is also very photogenic. I have a lot of pictures of it, so it's, I don't know, it's a good one. I definitely can say that. But moving on from there, we have Columbia Harbor House.
So I've only eaten here once, and it was because your lunch is included on Keys to the Kingdom, and so you like order it in advance, and they have it like waiting for you, and you go upstairs and hang out. But it's funny, like the one thing that I ate there, they recently took off the menu.
What was that?
Which is it was the Lighthouse sandwich, which was hummus, tomato, and broccoli slaw served on multigrain bread. And it was one of the few vegetarian options on the menu, so a lot of people kind of got up in arms about it. So, but, like I said, I've only eaten there the one time, so I wasn't too heartbroken.
This is another one that I've eaten at maybe once or twice, vaguely remember it, and then just, I don't know, kind of threw it in my back pocket of places I may or may not ever eat again.
I really like Columbia Harbor House. I don't eat at a lot of different restaurants when I go to Magic Kingdom, especially. But aside from Casey's, Columbia Harbor House is probably one of the few that I do go to pretty regularly. I like the food. I think it's kind of cool. You get some of that New England style food, and there's not a whole lot of other places that you can get that in the parks. At least not to my knowledge. Though I do like it. I know these rumors keep swirling around about this getting rethemed as a Haunted Mansion restaurant, which I would probably be in favor for, because yeah, if they can add more Haunted Mansion stuff into the parks, I am not going to be against that at all. But one thing that I did find out about this, which I didn't realize until I was doing some research this week, was that Columbia Harbor House actually has some kind of cool connections with the Haunted Mansion. Might touch on this a little bit earlier when we get there, but one of the original storylines for the Haunted Mansion was actually going to be revolving around an old sea captain and a haunted house that he was a part of. And a lot of the theming inside Columbia Harbor House has to do with ghost ships or ships that were lost at sea. And so it's a subtle tie-in, but there are a lot of theming cues if you're willing to dig into it, or if you know some of the history behind the Haunted Mansion, to see how those are kind of sprinkled about within Columbia Harbor House.
Yeah, that is really cool. I never knew that.
I really like the theming of this restaurant. Like I said, it's not very memorable food-wise to me. This is another one that I've heard get a lot of good reviews in terms of their food, but the thing that always sticks out to me is the theming of this restaurant, and I know I've eaten here just because I very vividly remember the theming.
Yeah, like Brian was saying, the rumors swirling around that it's going to be rethemed into Haunted Mansion. I would totally be in favor of it. I know a lot of people would be upset because it's one of the few quick service, decent quick service restaurants
Right.
in Magic Kingdom. But, if they turn it into a Haunted Mansion restaurant, there's no way it's going to be quick service.
No, they wouldn't pass up that opportunity to, pull more guests in and have them sit down and, probably be a lot more willing to spend money on a sit-down restaurant if it was Haunted Mansion themed.
Plus,
so.
How much do we really need that extra quick service place? I think Magic Kingdom always suffers from not having any sit-downs in the park. We've touched on this before, but given the option to throw another sit-down restaurant in there, they'll take it.
Yeah.
So after that, we have Memento Mori. As we inch closer to the Haunted Mansion, we reach the gift shop that sells all of that awesome Haunted Mansion merch.
That's my favorite gift shop.
I would decorate my house with Memento Mori stuff if I could.
Yeah, it is awesome. And obviously, I love the Haunted Mansion. It's my favorite attraction. But even if it wasn't Haunted Mansion themed, I love that there still exists the detached, a post-ride gift shop that sells, almost exclusively stuff pertaining to that ride. And in recent years, stuff has kind of gotten where all the gift shops sell more or less a lot of the same stuff. Well, Memento Mori definitely isn't like that. And I wish that they would continue doing this with other ones, because it kind of, it feels more, well, I should say you don't feel as immersed, I think, if you come off a ride, you enter the gift shop, and it's just a bunch of generic Disney stuff. When you get off Haunted Mansion and you walk in and it's like still nothing but Haunted Mansion themed merchandise, you're still in that immersion of the ride. So really wish Disney would kind of go back to their old ways with that, with other gift shops. But, 2 thumbs up to Memento Mori for keep doing it, even though it is a newer gift shop.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, because I remember how jarring it was getting off Pirates and seeing like Jack Skellington stuff in the gift shop, and I was like, what does this have to do with Pirates? Because it's a skeleton?
Yeah.
And yeah, I really appreciate that is not at all the way Memento
For a
Mori
while
is.
they had some like Nightmare Before Christmas stuff in there, but I know it's been like slowly phased out. So
I think it fits a little bit better in Memento Mori anyway.
it fits a little bit better.
But yeah, it's still not totally relevant, but I don't know. I'd rather see it there than
Right.
at Pirates.
Like I said, I could live in this gift shop. There's so many different things, and kind of to your point, there's so many different kinds of merchandise. Like, you don't just have t-shirts, you don't just have like the standard coffee mugs, you have like a whole bunch of home decor stuff. You have like just anything Haunted Mansion that you can think of is in this gift shop.
Except the $2,000 chairs.
Oh gosh.
Oh, jeez. The $2,000 one's the cheap one.
Oh no. I would never spend that much on Disney merchandise. But you also have something else listed here, Brian, that I've never done. I don't know if anybody else has. The Phantom photo.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's the official name for it, but I'm sure everyone knows what I'm talking about.
It's like the holographic one, right?
Uh-huh.
They call it the spirit photography.
There we go. But yeah, I've never done this. This is one of those things that I feel like is just a matter of time. I'm eventually going to get around to doing this because I love Haunted Mansion so much, and that would be a really cool, keepsake to take home. And I don't see a lot of people doing it, which kind of surprises me. I also have no idea how much this costs. Probably should have looked that up, but have any of y'all done it?
I have not. I've seen a few people doing it like while I was looking around, but I've never done it. I do know that I just looked it up, and it's apparently $24.95.
That's not awful.
Wait, sorry, correction. That's not for the photograph. That's for the frame. So it does. It does not say how much the photograph is.
If the frame is that price, I'm going to assume that the photograph is probably very expensive.
No, I just found it. It's $19.95.
Oh, okay.
That's still not that bad.
Yeah, it's not that bad. But, yeah.
Do you know what? Maybe next time I'm down there, I'll do it since it's not super expensive, and I can talk about that. But
Yeah.
like you've said, I've seen people do it, and it looks cool. It's just one of those things that I never really stopped to think about.
Yeah,
And
for
the more-
sure.
Side note, the more we're doing these in-depth tours, the more I'm thinking about, like, how many things there are that I've either, A, never fully experienced, or B, never really taken the time to stop and do. And I think that that's kind of a testament to how much there is to do in these parks.
Mm-hmm.
And we haven't even left the Magic Kingdom. But are you guys ready to move on to the main attraction of Liberty Square?
You mean of Walt Disney World?
I mean, you're not wrong. Haunted Mansion, my favorite attraction.
Yeah.
And I think it's a show favorite too.
Definitely.
Where would we even begin with this attraction? Because there's so many good things about this this place.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely one that we could devote an entire show to. It's just, you know, the history behind it is really cool. All the development that went into it, and even just, you know, looking at the ride itself, there's so much to it. There's, you know, all the different techniques that were used throughout the ride to get the different effects. You know, the theming of the queue, just everything. There's so much to talk about with this.
I don't know how else to explain it other than the fact that this is my favorite ride. Like you said, there's just so much to love, and there's so many different little details. I would also say that this is an attraction, and I know we've said a couple of times that Disney does really well with their theming. This is probably one of my favorite ones, that the second you step into that queue, you're instantly immersed in the atmosphere of the ride. From the second you enter those gates, I mean, from far away, it's the house at the end of the street. But the second you get closer and closer, you notice there's something off about this place. And it's got the audio cues, it's got the different visual effects that they use just in the queue alone, leading up to such a great attraction. I could not gush about this enough.
Yeah. It checks almost every box I can think of for what I want in an attraction. It has good theming. It has a cool pre-show that, you know, builds up the suspense of the ride. The ride itself, the Omni-Mover system that they, you know, put into it. This was one of, not the first, but one of the first, you know, major rides that they put in one of the parks that used the Omni-Mover system. You know, the storytelling throughout, the technology that went into it, it's just, it has almost everything. I look at other attractions and I say, yeah, they're really cool. I might have done this different. I might have done that different. It's hard for me to go through the Haunted Mansion and honestly pick out anything to say, ooh, it could have been improved on if they'd have done this or that. Like, it is classic Disney. I think it sets the bar so high for any dark ride that Disney's developed, and I don't see it ever really needing to be updated. Not, you know, slight refurbishments here and there. You know, when they added the bride in the attic, that was a cool little thing, but nothing, no major overhauls that would really need to be done, you know?
You mean you're telling me you don't want Haunted Mansion Holiday?
I would say so. I mean, yeah, I wouldn't want anything permanent, but I think it would be cool to have an overlay like that.
I think this is one of those few rides, kind of like you were just saying, that the updates haven't taken anything out of it. It's been classic Disney from the start to where it is now. Even, like, I'm a big audio person. I love music. I love, like, just the sounds of Walt Disney World are what kind of, like, keep me sane through my time not being in the parks. And let's just take a minute to talk about how good this soundtrack is in this attraction. It is such a classic in terms of Disney music, and that's something that I wish Disney would just bring back with their attractions.
Yeah. It does seem like that, at least in recent years, that, you know, they don't seem to want to really develop like new songs and stuff and new, you know, soundtracks and audio for the ride specifically. And I think a lot of that comes with them pulling more existing IP into rides that they're making. But still, yeah, the Haunted Mansion does a great job at that. The soundtrack and the songs, I mean, Grim Grinning Ghost, you know, amazing.
If you've never been to Disney World, you can recognize Grim Grinning Ghost.
Right.
I think I told you guys today, I was sitting in work and the office next door to me, the accounting office nonetheless, was listening to a Pandora station, and Grim Grinning Ghost came on in the shuffle, and I was like, where am I? We were even just talking about this in a group chat, like, Disney is using so many of their existing IPs, which isn't a bad thing, it's just, it kind of stinks because you have such great attractions with such great scores like this and Pirates that the last attraction I really remember that got a very memorable score, and I think Brian's going to disagree with me on this one, is Soarin'. I mean, that's one that sticks out to me, but other than that, that's the last one I remember.
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree with that. Soarin' has its faults in my book, but I will say that, the soundtrack for it is not one of them, so.
But what else do you guys, like, really associate this attraction with? Because that's my biggest one. Just the theming in general, and then the obvious musical choices.
I think what I love most about this is that it really has so much to offer, I feel like, for any level of Disney fan, and as I have, gone as a kid up to, as I got older and am now an adult, and now even more so that, like, I'm this big of a Disney fan and I like doing all this research into the history and the background and the, like, subtle theming of it. Like, you can go in there as a kid or someone who is going to Disney for the first time and enjoy the Haunted Mansion just for what it is on the surface. But if you're willing to go in there and really dig into the history of it, or really look into the theming and how it ties into other stuff and how all the little storylines throughout the ride are connected, like, it offers even more. So I feel like that's what makes it such a, quintessentially classic Disney ride, is that it really offers something for everyone. And
even if you think about it from the standpoint of, like, when this ride opened, this is amazing technology. Like, even today, it's still, like, some of that stuff, obviously I've never looked into because I've said my feelings about, ruining the magic. But it's just, it is definitely, like, a magical thing, I guess, for lack of better word.
Well, I think a lot of it, it's if you look at movies too, this is another thing. If you look at an older movie that uses practical effects as opposed to, older CGI, the older movies that use a lot more practical effects have held up far, far better over time. And that's kind of the same case with Haunted Mansion. Haunted Mansion uses a ton of practical effects instead of trying to use some kind of, like, screen projections and that kind of stuff, which, would have been obviously very dated back in the day. And I think that's what's kind of helped it hold up over the years so well.
Did you guys want to touch on some of the history stuff we have here? Just kind of quick breeze through some of it.
Well,
just some of the nifty things you guys have found.
So for y'all two looking at these show notes, I wrote up a little bit of the history of it, which I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but I just thought it was really interesting. And definitely, if you have time and you're a big fan of the Haunted Mansion, read some of the history. One of the books that I have on it is The Haunted Mansion Imagineering, a Disney classic, and it's by Jason Sorrell, and it's really cool. It lends a lot of background knowledge on it. It has a lot of cool pictures of the development of the ride, and it touches on how the Imagineers worked on it and the different changes that they had to make as it went from park to park and got built there. But one of the coolest things that I just think about it is, like, how much time went into the development of this and how much it changed from the initial concepts to what it ended up as. So just to briefly touch on, it started out in 1957 with Ken Anderson, one of the Imagineers at Disney, and it was originally meant to be a walk-through attraction. And over the years, a lot of different storylines were developed with it, and it kept getting put on hold and going back to be built. And in 1961 was when they actually first announced that the attraction was going to be open. They started handing out flyers, and they had park maps with it noted on it. And between storyline changes, the work on the World's Fair, and then obviously Walt's death, really pushed things back. And at the end of the day, they finally decided to make it a ride-through attraction once the Omnimover was developed, but it wasn't open until '69. And it's crazy to think that, for almost 12 years, this ride was in development, and how different it would have been if the initial concepts were used as a walk-through attraction to what we have today.
I like to think about how different Disney World was on, or at least the Magic Kingdom, how different it was on opening day. Because we've talked about this a couple times. Like, there weren't really many attractions, and a lot of this stuff, still, it's just mind-blowing to me. The history of Disney is just so fascinating. We could really gush on this attraction all day. Like, I don't think there's even... Is there a bad thing that you guys could even say about the Haunted Mansion? Like, one thing you would change or anything like that? Because I know Brian said no. And I'm kind of in the same boat.
The only thing I would change is not letting people who stick their hands out ride it.
I can't remember when we did our superlatives if this was even on my list for most likely to break down. I think it was on someone's.
It was on mine, I think.
I wish that we could get a Haunted Mansion that didn't break down all the time. But that's not even, to fault for them. That's just the people that ride it.
I'm just like, keep your hands in the doom buggy. I know it's cool. I want to touch it too. Don't get me wrong, but that's the only thing I would change.
So, what is y'all's favorite scene in the Haunted Mansion?
Oh, that's a hard one. That was actually going to be my closer question for this little section of Haunted Mansion stuff.
I mean, a lot of people obviously would say the ballroom because that's such a cool scene.
It's such an iconic scene, too.
Yeah, and that's definitely one of my favorites, but I have this really weird obsession with the wallpaper. So I really...
It's my desktop at work, so I can agree with you.
It's my phone screen background. And so I don't know, I really like just the hallway, just getting to see, the little eyes blinking on the wallpaper.
Mine has to be, and this is going to be the lamest part, I love the stretching room.
Oh, no, that's great.
I can quote every single line. It's just fantastic. And my favorite thing to do, I know I've mentioned this before, is if you ride this attraction a couple times, don't do it the first time because obviously you have to pay attention to the ride. Pay attention to all the portraits. Pay attention to everything. There's just so much detail in this one little room. And the effect itself is just so cool. But after you've done it a couple times, take note of the cast members. I always see the cast member that's in the stretching room having fun with the guests. Every time that the lights go out and, there's that big moment right before the doors open, I always find that a cast member is lurking around the stretching room while everyone's looking up and waiting to scare someone when the lights come back on. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, as many times as I've gone on Haunted Mansion, and I don't want to give away the secret, I'm sure you guys know, but listeners can find out for yourself. I know which portrait to stand under to be the closest to the door, and I'm always, right in front of it when that cast member walks around, and they're, staring at me when the lights come on. I'm like... It gets me every time.
I was gonna say that. I love when you walk in there and you kind of lock eyes with the other people, the other big Disney fans, and say, "Oh, you're going under that one too? Yeah, we're going over there."
I actually don't make this is one of the few attractions I will take my time through this queue on, and even in the stretching room, I will stand in the dead center if I can.
The dead center.
Yeah, I knew someone was gonna go there. But I will stand dead center and just take it all in because I really don't think that there's a bad section of this ride.
Yeah.
Even the foyer area is great, and you don't spend a lot of time in there.
Yeah.
All right, so we should probably touch on the last couple things now that we've gushed about Haunted Mansion enough.
Before we move on, I do want to do a little plug for the Disney Marvel Haunted Mansion comic book.
Oh, they were so good.
Yep.
Because, yeah, it's really good. And if anybody out there is a huge Haunted Mansion fan and you haven't read them, then you definitely should. And you should also check out the Seekers of the Weird comic books, because was one of the original kind of concepts before it became Haunted Mansion, was the Museum of the Weird. So they took this idea and made the Disney Marvel comic book out of it. So highly recommend.
I pride myself on the fact that I hunted out every issue of the Disney Marvel comic
Yep.
when they were coming out. And like last year when we went for Not So Scary, we went to the Contemporary, I think, because we were just riding the monorail. And I ended up in one of the stores and I grabbed like 3 different variants of the comics I already had. So this is one of my Disney collectibles. I love them. I cannot recommend them enough. So, after that, we have a new addition to Liberty Square. We have Great Moments in American History featuring the Muppets. I love this show.
It's great.
You guys know my feelings on the Muppets, so I absolutely am going to love everything that they do for the most part. But this is just another show that's done right, and I kind of am going to contradict myself and say that, you know, earlier I said the last iconic Disney attraction song I remember hearing was Soarin', but this song gets stuck in my head every time I think about it. Like, I said it in the group chat earlier. I was writing my notes out, and I got to this, and all of a sudden it just popped in my head. And I think Disney they nailed it with this.
Yeah, I totally agree. This show's hilarious.
Now, there's 2 shows for people that don't know. You have the show about the Declaration of Independence and the show about the Ride of Paul Revere. They happen throughout the day. I'm not going to list the times just because there's so many different ones and they're so, you know, weirdly thrown all over the place. Check your park maps, though. They will tell you what times they air. And it's in a very interesting spot. It's right above the Heritage House, and it's also kind of above Hall of Presidents, isn't it? Because the one, Sam Eagle comes out of the top.
Yeah.
So it's a very weird kind of like you have to look up to see it. You will definitely know when it's going on, but I think they picked the perfect spot for this because it's not really in the way, and it's just so well done.
Yeah. I love that.
Plus, who doesn't love the Muppets in the Park?
Exactly. And I love that it's kind of one of those things that you can just stumble upon. You know, there's no seating for it. You're not going to sit down and wait and then the show's going to start, you know. As you're walking through Liberty Square, it just kind of happens out of nowhere. So, that's really cool.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to lie. When it first came out and we were down there, I kind of waited for it.
Yeah, I mean, me too, but I'm saying it's not like a set-up attraction. It's cool that you're still within the theming just of Liberty Square. You know, you're not sitting down in a theater or something to watch the show.
Right, and it's in a world where we're moving away from Streetmosphere with everything that Disney's kind of talked about in the last couple of years with like all the budget cuts to Citizens of Hollywood and, you know, Citizens of Main Street getting kind of cut down a little bit too. Like, we're seeing a lot of those street performers going away. But in the last couple of years, you know, we've seen this, and we've also seen, I guess, the replacement for Push, which I still don't know how I feel about that. But, like, we've seen some Streetmosphere come back, and it's definitely a good thing that Disney's done.
Mm-hmm.
I actually have only gotten to see it once, and it was the show about the Declaration of Independence, and I absolutely loved it. I thought it was hilarious, especially like you were saying, how catchy the song is, and just how Disney's just totally, I don't know, it's almost a political statement, you know, it's great moments in history, but only the American parts. But I just love that.
Can we talk about how quotable this is, too? Like, my favorite joke in this entire thing is, I want to say it's the Declaration of Independence one, maybe, where Fozzie says, "At first you don't succeed, maybe skydiving isn't for you." Like, there's so many good quotes to this thing, and like, it's just so true to the Muppets, and that just makes me so happy.
It is. All of the Muppets characters really get, to play a part in it. You've got Sam being overly patriotic. You've got Fozzie making stupid jokes. You've got Miss Piggy trying to run around being the center of attention, and Kermit trying to hold everything together. Like, it is just, it does the Muppets right, which you gotta love.
Have you seen both of them, Brian? I know Beth just said she's only seen one.
Yeah, I've seen both of them. It's been a while, but I have seen both.
Which one do you prefer? If you have the choice to see them, which one would you rather see?
I like the Declaration of Independence one personally.
Yeah, I think I like that one a little bit better. Especially because it has, like, this is so weirdly sappy and dumb, but they have that climactic moment where they actually kind of pull it all together. And it's so, like, stereotypical Muppets where, like, everything goes wrong, but in the end it all kind of works out. Mm-hmm. And just the storytelling is so great in that short couple-minute show. Disney should take notes on this attraction that they did right.
Yeah.
I did hear a rumor, and, like...
Oh, no.
I heard it from Jim Hill, though, so, you got to take it with a grain of salt. But a lot of times he has some legit intel. But he was saying that they're potentially planning something similar to Great Moments in Hollywood Studios, in the the area that they just opened with the Baseline Tap Room and stuff, the Grand Avenue, I think is what they call it. And the whole shtick of it is going to be like the Muppets looking down at the people waiting to get into Star Wars land and making fun of them.
That's
I vaguely
awesome.
remember hearing that.
And I really hope they do it.
Didn't we talk about this when we talked about Hollywood Studios, but wasn't the original plan for a Muppets, movie history ride?
It was supposed to be the Great Muppet Movie Ride, where they satirized the Great Movie Ride. So
which would also be great.
Yeah. I still, it wouldn't make sense now that the Great Movie Ride's gone, but I still feel like I would love for them to continue on with that and end up making that attraction.
Disney, take notes. Get more Muppets.
Yes. More Muppets or more Haunted Mansion, I'm completely fine with.
Yes.
Replace all the Frozen stuff they've added to the park with Muppets.
There you go.
Oh, no. So, I think that's kind of the end of our notes on this tour. I did post to Twitter a couple hours ago, asking people what their favorite parts of not Haunted Mansion. Yeah, what's your favorite part of Haunted Mansion?
All of it.
I did ask people what their favorite parts of Liberty Square are. And we got two responses. One we actually didn't touch on, and now that I'm seeing that, we probably could go back on it. So, Disco Yeti, which is at Guy's Guide to the number 2 WDW, said Poop River. While it's funny, it's amazing that they would put something so obscene in it just for historical facts, which I kind of agree with. We kind of said that earlier. It's neat that they would go to such lengths to detail this land. And we also got DVC Mary, which is at DVC_99, said the tree and the story behind it. We didn't even touch on the Liberty tree.
Yeah.
Which is kind of interesting because I started to read these tweets while you guys were talking earlier, and I had to actually pull up the story about the Liberty tree. But that's another great historical piece that they kind of just brought in, and it's so easily overlooked. Okay, so it's modeled after the original Liberty Tree in Boston, and it sits directly across from the Hall of Presidents. The Liberty Tree served as a gathering place for the Sons of Liberty in the months leading up to the Boston Tea Party. So it's like a full-scale replica of this tree, and it illuminates 13 lanterns, which symbolize the 13 original colonies. But it's a beautiful centerpiece to Liberty Square that gets often overlooked. But that's really the big story behind it. So, another great theming thing on Disney's part.
Yeah.
So, that said, I mean, I guess we could always just talk about, like, what's your favorite part of Liberty Square, guys? Obviously, Haunted Mansion, but, like, when you think Liberty Square, aside from that, what really sticks out to you?
I think to me is like kind of what we were talking about with the Poop River. It's just like a lot of the details, and I know this is it could apply to Disney in general, but specifically to Liberty Square. A lot of the details are just really cleverly done because little kids aren't going to realize that that's what that is, and adults aren't even going to realize what that is until they hear about it. Like I didn't know. Who did, you know? And I think it's really cool because it gives Disney fans, more to look into. For people like us who go to the parks all the time, it's nice to learn stuff like that because it's like, something you didn't know. It's really cool to increase your Disney knowledge, I guess.
Yeah. And
Well, it just adds to the immersion.
right. And
Right.
even as someone that looks into that kind of stuff a lot, I still feel like, there's always more digging I could do, more cool little theming stuff that I could dig out of it if I looked into it, which, it just goes to show how much work and effort the Imagineers put into it.
For sure. I think my favorite part, just when I think Liberty Square, I think this land to me has the most cohesive theming, I guess. And I kind of said it earlier with the fact that a lot of people call this the most subtle land ever. But I think to me, this is definitely the one that, like, I know the story when I walk in. Not just because you've heard it over and over again from, the history class or whatever. But, like, even just walking in and seeing all the attractions and everything there, you kind of know just what's going on, and you know what they were looking for. So I think that's what I really love about this attraction, or this land.
Yeah. Well, and we talked about it a little bit earlier with some of the other stuff, but I'm just now realizing this as we're going over it, but aside from them, adding the Great Moments in American History part with the Muppets, there's no non-original Disney IP in this land other than that, at least as far as I can see. It's
You're right. Well, so they do a thing on the riverboat with Tiana, but no, you're 100% right.
But we talked about it before on other shows and touched on it a little bit here. A lot of people have a very negative opinion about Disney adding too much of their existing IP into the parks and not developing original rides, which I don't completely agree with. I think it's kind of ridiculous to go into Disney and complain about there being too much Disney stuff there. But I think, a lot can be said about some of these classic attractions, and, the Haunted Mansion, perfect example of Disney taking an original idea and running it and just completely developing something in and of itself in an attraction. And most of, Liberty Square is Disney taking original ideas and building a land around it.
And you're right, those are the ones that tend to stand the test of time.
Yeah.
If you think about the rides that people typically like hold near and dear to their hearts, a lot of them, I would say, if not most or all, are original ideas,
Yeah.
Well, even then, like, if I tell you to think of the first 3 Disney classics that come to your mind, you're going to immediately go Haunted Mansion, Pirates, Space Mountain, probably.
I would say Carousel of Progress, but
Yeah, even then, like...
But again, it's another original.
They're all original ideas.
One. So...
I think the more we talk about these lands, the more I kind of, like, fall in love with them, I guess, is the best way to put it. Because we talk about these each week, and then it's like, wow, I really love how much Disney's gone through these extents. And I hope that we've kind of shared that with, someone out there. Like, I hope you're listening to this podcast and you just go, wow, I didn't know all that stuff about Liberty Square. Or maybe you know stuff that we don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But this is what makes Disney so great in my mind.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So you guys ready to tie it up for the week? Is there anything you guys want to go over before we end this here?
No, I think that's it.
I think we're good. What about you, Beth?
Yeah, I'm good to go.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for us today, guys. Thanks for joining us again on another episode of the Station 71 podcast. If you liked what you heard, be sure to subscribe to us on iTunes and leave us an iTunes review as well so, we can read them on the show. We've been trying to get a little bit more involved with our listeners out there. Another way you can get engaged with us, send us an email. Station71podcast@gmail.com is our email. Facebook.com/Station71pod is our Facebook page. Twitter, we're on Twitter at Station71pod, and Instagram as well at Station71podcast. We hope you guys enjoyed your ride, and we'll see you real soon.
Hurry back. Be sure to bring your death certificate. Hurry back. If you decide to join us, be sure to bring your death certificate.